Welcome to long-form content of Tech Bytes and News. This is a compilation on latest news and articles featured on Hacker News. You can find the original links of articles in the description. Please like and subscribe to support future content. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating piece, arguing that AI is subtly, yet powerfully, shaping the tech landscape, potentially hindering the adoption of newer, potentially better technologies. It's a bit controversial, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. The idea that AI, designed to assist, might be inadvertently creating a bottleneck is intriguing. What's the core argument here?
The main point is that the training data cutoffs in large language models, LLMs, create a significant knowledge gap. Think about it. These models are trained on massive datasets, but by the time they're released, that data is already outdated. This means newer technologies simply aren't in the AI's knowledge base, making them less appealing to developers who rely on AI assistance.
So, a self-reinforcing cycle? AI support means less adoption means less documentation and online discussion, and therefore less data for future training sets. Arikin. It's a vicious circle.
Precisely. And it's not just about entirely new technologies. Even updates to existing frameworks might be overlooked because the AI hasn't been updated to reflect those changes. It's like the AI is creating a technological inertia.
That's a really interesting point. But isn't there a counter-argument? Surely popular technologies will still get enough attention and documentation regardless of AI assistance, right?
You're right to challenge that. The article acknowledges that established technologies with a strong community will likely persist. However, the concern is that the AMI's bias might unfairly favor those already established technologies, giving them an even greater advantage over newer, potentially superior alternatives.
And that bias isn't just about the training data, is it? The article also talks about system prompt influence. That's a whole other layer of complexity.
Exactly. The author found that some LLMs, like Claude, seem to have a built-in preference for certain technologies, like React and Tailwind CSS. Even when explicitly instructed otherwise, the AI sometimes defaults to these preferred technologies, potentially influencing developer choices subconsciously.
Wow, that's a serious concern. It's like the AI is subtly dictating the future of software development. The article mentions some experiments where different AI models were asked to create a simple web app. What were the results?
The results were quite revealing. Claude and ChatGPT consistently opted for React and Tailwind, while Gemini suggested vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but still recommended React, Angular, and Vue. DeepSeek showed more variability, but it also required more prompting to produce actual code. This suggests a clear bias towards certain technologies in some of the most popular AI tools.
So what's the takeaway? Is this a call for AI companies to change their models, or is there something else we should be considering?
The author calls for more transparency from AI companies. They suggest that disclosing the biases inherent in their models is crucial. We need to understand how these powerful tools are shaping our technological choices, and we need to be aware of the potential for unintended consequences. It's a call for more responsible AI development, essentially.
It's a really thought-provoking article. It makes you wonder about the long-term implications of AI's influence on technological innovation. It's not just about the code, it's about the entire ecosystem of development and adoption.
Absolutely. And that's why this discussion is so important. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into CodeWeaver, a new command line tool for generating comprehensive markdown documentation of your codebase. It's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, I saw the announcement. It sounds incredibly useful. So the core idea is to take your entire project, recursively scan it, and output a single, navigable markdown file, right?
Exactly. Think of it as a supercharged tree command. But instead of just showing the directory structure, it actually embeds the content of each file within syntax-highlighted code blocks. It's like having your entire codebase neatly packaged into a single, easily shareable document.
That's amazing for collaboration, especially with larger teams. Imagine the ease of onboarding new developers, or just quickly referencing code snippets across different parts of a project. What about version control? Does it handle that?
Well, it doesn't directly integrate with Git, but you can use the ignore patterns to exclude the .git directory. It's more about generating a snapshot of your code at a specific point in time. The focus is on the structure and content, not the version history itself.
I see. So how flexible is the filtering? Can you, for example, exclude specific file types or even use regular expressions?
Absolutely. It uses regular expressions for its ignore patterns, so you have a ton of flexibility. You can exclude anything from build artifacts to specific file types, even entire directories, with surgical precision. They even provide options to log included and excluded paths to separate files for debugging.
That's a really nice touch for troubleshooting. And the installation? Is it straightforward?
Super easy. If you have Go installed, it's a simple Go install command. Otherwise, pre-built executables are available on the releases page. Even if you download the executable, you might need to use keymod +X to make it executable, depending on your system.
Got it. And the usage, is it command line only?
Yep, entirely command line driven. But it's very intuitive. The edge flag gives you a complete help message, and the options are clearly documented. You specify the input directory, the output file name, your ignore patterns, and, optionally, the files for logging included and excluded paths.
So you could, for example, generate documentation for a specific subdirectory of your project and name the output file something descriptive, like module_docs.md.
Precisely. The flexibility is a key strength. You're not locked into a single workflow. You can tailor it to your specific needs.
This is really impressive. It seems like a game changer for code-based documentation and sharing. What about contributing to the project itself? Is that encouraged?
Absolutely. They explicitly welcome contributions, whether it's reporting issues, suggesting features, or submitting pull requests. It's all open source under the MIT license.
Fantastic. Well, this has been a really insightful discussion. Thanks for breaking down CodeWeaver for us.
My pleasure. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this overview of CodeWeaver helpful. Have a great day, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into Zed's new edit prediction feature, powered by their open source model, Zeta. It's incredibly cool.
Yeah, I saw that. Tab to accept predictions? That sounds amazing for productivity. But how does it handle conflicts with existing tab functionality, like indentation?
That's a great question. They cleverly integrated it. If you have language server suggestions, you use Option or Alt to preview the prediction, then Tab to accept. It's seamless. On Linux, they use Alt-Carol as a fallback, which is pretty smart.
Clever indeed. So Zeta itself, what's the tech behind it?
It's based on QN 2.5 Coder 7b and fully open source, even the dataset. They're encouraging community contributions, which is fantastic, but they're carefully reviewing submissions to ensure safety and privacy, which is a responsible approach.
I see. And the training process, that sounds fascinating. They mentioned a fill-in-the-middle approach wasn't ideal for edit prediction. Why's that?
Right. Most models are trained to fill gaps, but Zeta predicts edits anywhere in the code. They found models aren't great at granular edits, but they're amazing at rewriting larger chunks. So they trained Zeta to rewrite snippets around the cursor, incorporating predictions.
Interesting. So how did they test such a thing? Unit tests seem tricky with LLMs, right?
Exactly. They used a larger LLM, Claude, to evaluate Zeta's edits. Instead of strict assertions, they wrote tests in plain English, letting Claude check if the results matched the intent. Much more practical than brittle token-level checks.
That's a brilliant workaround. They also mentioned prompt engineering challenges, right? Initially using a 32B model?
Yeah, initially they used QN 2.5 Coder 32B, but it was too slow, and the prompt engineering became a nightmare. Changing the prompt to pass some tests broke others. It was flaky.
So they switched to supervised fine-tuning?
Yes, using Unsloth and Lowray. They started with synthetic data generated by Claude, then collected real-world examples from their team. But even with 400 examples, they hit edge cases.
And that's where direct preference optimization, DPO, came in?
Precisely. DPO let them provide both positive and negative examples, teaching Zeta what edits to avoid. Just 150 carefully chosen examples significantly improved things.
Impressive. But latency is crucial for a feature like this. How did they achieve such low latency?
They used speculative decoding, parallelizing token generation by using the input as a reference, and for serving, they partnered with Bayesian, who optimized the model for their infrastructure. They also use Cloudflare workers for proximity to the user.
Wow, that's a comprehensive approach. It sounds like a remarkable engineering feat. They're even open sourcing the model and dataset.
Absolutely. It's a testament to their commitment to open source. They're planning more experiments too, which is exciting. And they have a companion video explaining the technical details. Definitely check it out.
I will. Thanks for breaking this down. This is a fantastic example of innovative AI application in software development.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into some exciting news from the world of finance. The New York Stock Exchange is launching NYSE Texas. Pretty big deal, right?
Absolutely. I saw the announcement. It's a significant expansion for the NYSE, especially considering Texas's already substantial presence in the NYSE-listed companies. Over $3.7 trillion in market value.
Exactly. That's a massive chunk of the market. The press release highlights that Texas boasts more NYSE-listed companies than any other state. It makes perfect strategic sense for them to establish a physical presence there. They're not just setting up shop, they're essentially reincorporating NYSE Chicago as NYSE Texas, based in Dallas.
So it's not just a new office, it's a full-fledged exchange? That's a major commitment. What are the key benefits they're hoping to achieve?
Yeah, a major commitment. They're aiming to provide a listing and trading venue directly within the heart of this booming southwestern economy. It's about tapping into Texas's growing population, its strong economy, and its business-friendly regulatory environment. It's a smart move to attract both Texas-based and international companies looking to list.
I see. It's a win-win. Texas gets a major boost to its financial infrastructure, and the NYSE gains access to a huge, growing market. But, isn't there a risk involved in consolidating operations like this? What about potential disruptions during the transition?
That's a valid concern. Any large-scale transition like this carries inherent risks. The press release mentions that regulatory filings are pending, so there's a period of uncertainty before the reincorporation is fully effective. However, the NYSE, being a seasoned player, likely has robust contingency plans in place to minimize disruption. They've been around for 230 years, after all.
True, their experience is a huge asset. But, the press release also mentions Intercontinental Exchange, ICE, the parent company. How does this move benefit ICE as a whole?
Excellent point. ICE's overall strategy is about providing technology and data services across various asset classes. This expansion directly aligns with that goal. By establishing a stronger presence in Texas, ICE strengthens its position in the U.S. market, enhancing its offerings and potentially attracting more clients. It's a strategic move to solidify their dominance in the financial technology space.
It's all about expanding their network and influence, right? Connecting more people to opportunities, as their mission statement puts it. This Texas venture seems like a perfect example of that. It's a bold move, but it seems well calculated.
Precisely. It's a strategic play to capitalize on a growing market and solidify their position as a leading global provider of technology and data. And, the fact that they're highlighting the pro-business atmosphere in Texas speaks volumes about their confidence in the long-term prospects of this venture. It's not just about short-term gains, it's a long-term investment in the future of finance.
It certainly sounds like a game changer. Thanks for breaking down this exciting news for us.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating paper, benchmarking vision language models for OCR in dynamic video. It's a really exciting area, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm particularly interested in how these models stack up against traditional OCR. The paper mentions using Claude-3, Gemini 1.5, and GPT-4o, right? That's a pretty impressive lineup.
Yeah. They compared those cutting-edge VLMs against established players like Easy OCR and Rapid OCR. The benchmark uses a new dataset with 1,477 manually annotated frames from diverse sources, code editors, news broadcasts, YouTube, even ads. That's a really comprehensive approach to testing robustness, you know?
1,000+ frames? That's a significant dataset. What were the key metrics they used? I'm guessing WER, CER, and accuracy?
Exactly. Word error rate, character error rate, and overall accuracy. And the results showed that while VLMs have huge potential, often outperforming traditional methods, they still struggle with certain things. Hallucinations, for example, were a significant issue.
Hallucinations? You mean the models are fabricating text that isn't actually there?
Precisely. Plus, content security policies and stylized or occluded text also pose challenges. It's not a simple case of VLMs win. There are still some significant hurdles to overcome.
I see. So, it's not a complete replacement for traditional OCR just yet? That's interesting. What about the accessibility of this research?
That's a great point. The best part is that the dataset and the benchmarking framework are open source. The authors really want to encourage further research in this area. They've made the code and data publicly available, which is fantastic for the community.
That's excellent news. Open source benchmarks are crucial for driving progress in the field. It allows for more rigorous testing and comparison of different approaches. This is a really important contribution.
Absolutely. It's a significant step forward in understanding the capabilities and limitations of VLMs for video-based OCR, and the fact that they've tackled such a diverse range of video sources makes their findings even more valuable.
I'm curious, though, did the paper delve into the specific reasons behind the hallucinations? Was it a training data issue or something else?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, the abstract doesn't go into that level of detail. To get a deeper understanding of the root causes, we'd need to delve into the full paper itself. But it definitely highlights an important area for future research.
Definitely. This is a really exciting area of research, and this paper provides a solid foundation for future work. Thanks for summarizing it.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Go 1.24's exciting new WebAssembly, WASM features. It's a game changer, folks.
Absolutely. I'm buzzing with anticipation. So what's the big deal with this Go 1.24 update regarding WASM?
The core improvements revolve around two key areas: the Go WASM export directive and the ability to build WASI reactors. Think of it as giving Go a much stronger foothold in the WASM world.
Right, so Go WASM export. That lets you export Go functions directly to WASM, correct? Making them callable from outside the module?
Precisely. It's like opening a window to your Go code from the outside world. Before, it was more difficult to integrate Go with other systems using WASM. Now it's straightforward. You just add /go WASM export before your function definition, and boom, it's exported. It's analogous to CKIO's export directive, but simpler.
That's incredibly elegant. And what about these WASI reactors? What's the significance of those?
The reactors. They're persistent WASM modules. Unlike regular WASM modules that run to completion, reactors stay alive, ready to handle multiple requests. You build them using build mode equals C-shared, which avoids the automatic start function and instead uses initialize for setup.
So you initialize the reactor once, and then you can call its exported functions repeatedly without restarting it? That's a huge efficiency boost, especially for long-running tasks. The example using WA0 really highlights this.
Exactly. The WA0 example shows how easy it is to use these reactors. You instantiate the module, call _initialize, and then you can call your exported Go functions as many times as needed. It's incredibly efficient.
I see. But there are limitations, right? I mean, WASM is single-threaded. How does that affect Go routines spawned within a Go WASM export function?
You're right to point that out. That's a crucial limitation. While you can spawn Go routines, they won't continue executing after the GoWasm export function returns. You need to call back into the WASM module to resume their execution. It's something to keep in mind when designing your architecture.
Got it. So essentially, you can't have truly independent background tasks running within the WASM module without some form of callback mechanism. That's a significant constraint.
Precisely. And there are also type restrictions. While Go 1.24 relaxes some of these, especially with GoWasm import, there are still limitations, particularly around pointers and 64-bit versus 32-bit architectures. You can't pass pointers to structs containing pointer-type fields, for example.
Interesting. So despite these limitations, the overall improvements are substantial. The ability to build WASI reactors and export Go functions opens up a whole new world of possibilities for extending applications with Go-based WASM modules.
Absolutely. It's a significant step forward. This makes Go a much more powerful and versatile language for WASM development. The ability to easily export functions and build persistent reactors is a huge win for developers.
It certainly seems like a very promising development. Thanks for breaking it down for us.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Kagugi Search's exciting new Privacy Pass authentication. It's a game changer for online privacy, folks. Get ready.
I'm buzzing. So Privacy Pass, is it like magic? How does it actually work to keep my searches private?
Not magic, but pretty darn close. It uses cryptography, specifically a protocol with token generation and redemption phases. Think of it like this. You get a bunch of untraceable tokens. Each one lets you access Kanogi without revealing your identity. Brilliant.
Untraceable tokens? So even Kagi doesn't know who's searching what. That's incredible.
Precisely. The server, Kagi, verifies you have access, but it can't link the token to a specific user. It's all about unlinkability. They can't connect the dots between your searches and your account. Pretty neat, huh?
But how does the token generation work? I mean, you need to prove you're a legitimate user somehow, right?
Right. You initially prove your legitimacy using your Kagi session cookie. But that's only during token generation, which happens in the background. The tokens themselves are completely anonymous. It's a clever two-step process.
Okay, I see. So it's like a secret handshake, but the handshake itself is hidden? Clever.
Exactly. And the tokens are single-use, with expiration dates. So even if someone intercepts a token, it's useless after one search. Security through obscurity and expiration.
But what about IP addresses? Doesn't Kazogi still see the IP address of the request?
You're right to point that out. They do see the IP address. That's a limitation of the current system. However, they suggest using Tor or a VPN for extra anonymity if that's a concern. A valid point.
Makes sense. So how do I actually use this Privacy Pass? Is it complicated?
Not at all. It's integrated into the Orion browser, the Kagi Android app, and there are extensions for Chrome and Firefox. It's basically a simple toggle switch. Easy peasy.
That's fantastic. But what about my personalized settings? Will I lose those with Privacy Pass enabled?
That's a trade-off. Since Kadogi doesn't know who you are, you lose access to personalized settings like language preferences. They're exploring solutions. But for now, it's either full privacy or full customization. A tough choice, but a necessary one for maximum privacy.
I understand. So it's not a silver bullet, but a significant step forward. What about the future of Privacy Pass at Kakegi?
They plan to expand Privacy Pass support to other Kasagi services like Kasagi Assistant, Translate, and Maps in the coming weeks. They're also looking into allowing anonymous token purchases with cryptocurrencies like Monero. The future is bright.
This is all incredibly exciting. It seems like Kalagi is truly committed to user privacy. Amazing work.
Absolutely. They're not just talking about privacy. They're actively building technology to make it a reality, and they're open sourcing their implementation, which is a huge plus for transparency and community involvement. A truly commendable effort.
Definitely. Thanks for breaking this down for us. This is a must-have for privacy-conscious users.
My pleasure. And remember, listeners, you can find more details and even submit feedback on the Kakogi blog and feedback forum. Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day and stay informed. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating debugging saga involving a Linux kernel performance issue. It all started with listen overflows on our Apache web servers, a real nail-biter.
Listen overflows? What exactly are those, and why the excitement?
Right, so listen, overflows happen when Apache receives web requests faster than it can process them. The request queue fills up and overflows, leading to dropped requests and, you guessed it, slow page loads. A major headache for any web server.
I see. So the problem was tied to an OS upgrade from CentOS to Ubuntu, right? A kernel version bump from 3.10 to 6.8?
Exactly. The upgrade triggered a surge in these overflows, especially after new servers joined the pool. Initially, we suspected network issues, classic debugging gut feeling, but the network packet captures told a different story.
So it wasn't the network? What gave it away?
Well, Strace, PHP spy flame graphs, and even Wireshark showed seemingly slow network operations. But deeper analysis revealed normal network latency. The problem was actually on the server side, a huge system CPU spike.
A CPU spike? That's a pretty clear indicator of something else going wrong. What was the culprit?
That's where it got really interesting. The spike was linked to the inode switch WBS work FN kernel function, part of the inode C group switching mechanism. This function handles moving inodes between C groups during writeback, and it was completely hogging the CPU.
Inode C group switching? Could you explain that a bit more? I'm not familiar with that.
Sure. Think of C groups as resource containers for processes. Inodes, which hold file metadata, are assigned to the C group of the process doing most of the writing. When a process finishes, its F group is removed, and its inodes need to be reassigned. This reassignment, in our case, was causing the bottleneck.
So the thousands of files written during the server bootstrapping process were triggering this massive inode reshuffling? And that's what caused the CPU spike?
Precisely. We used BPF trace to confirm thousands of inode switches during the CPU spike. It was a beautiful moment of clarity. The fix was surprisingly simple, though.
Simple? After all that?
Yeah, we disabled the I/O and memory controllers in the system slice used by the bootstrapping process. This prevented the unnecessary C group accounting and inode switching. Problem solved.
Wow, that's a fantastic example of how deep debugging can lead to surprisingly simple solutions. So CentOS wasn't affected because it used C Groups v1, which doesn't have this issue?
Exactly. C Groups v2 introduced these controllers, and the problem seems to be specific to that version. We even created a minimal reproduction script using DD and split to generate a bunch of files, triggering the same CPU spike. It's a pretty robust reproduction, I must say.
Amazing work! So what's the takeaway here? Besides the obvious need for thorough debugging?
Well, always consider the kernel as a potential source of performance issues, especially after OS upgrades. And, don't underestimate the power of tools like BPF trace and perf for deep kernel analysis. They are invaluable for this kind of work. And of course, always check your C groups.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing this incredible debugging story. It's a great reminder of the complexities of modern systems and the importance of systematic troubleshooting. This was a wild ride.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating case study. How S2, a serverless API for streaming data, doubled its throughput using continuous profiling with Polar Signals Cloud. It's a real-world example of how smart profiling can drastically improve performance.
Absolutely. I'm eager to hear this. So C2 was hitting bottlenecks, right? What were the initial challenges they faced?
Precisely. They were dealing with significant CPU inefficiencies, impacting user capacity and operational costs. Troubleshooting was a nightmare without a robust profiling solution. Think of it like trying to find a leak in a massive pipe network without a proper map. A real headache.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly frustrating. So how did Polar Signals Cloud help them solve this?
Polar Signals offered continuous profiling, A game changer. Instead of relying on ad hoc tools like perf, they got real-time insights. Two key features were crucial. pprof.me for long-term immutable snapshots, and the ability to invert call stacks to pinpoint the cumulative impact of specific functions. It's like having X-ray vision into your application's performance.
Wow, X-ray vision. I like that. So, what specific optimizations did they implement?
The biggest win was optimizing SHA 256 checksum calculations. Initially, a whopping 68.37% of CPU was consumed by this, but a single line of code, enabling hardware acceleration on Graviton using the SHA-2 library, slashed that to 31.82%. That's a massive improvement, effectively doubling throughput without extra compute costs. Shikhar, S2's CEO, even highlighted this in a quote.
Incredible! A single line of code. That's the dream, isn't it? But what about other optimizations?
Oh, there were others. They found the AWS S3 Rust SDK was unnecessarily recomputing CRC3 2C checksums. A simple workaround fixed that. They also addressed excessive memory reallocation by reserving memory up front, further boosting efficiency. It's a testament to the power of continuous profiling, uncovering hidden inefficiencies you'd never find with traditional methods.
This is amazing. It really highlights the value of continuous monitoring and proactive optimization. It's not just about fixing problems as they arise, but preventing them altogether.
Exactly. And Polar Signal's flexible pricing model also played a role. Their costs weren't just tied to CPU cores, but also deployment frequency, making it a cost-effective solution for S2's dynamic environment. It's a win-win situation.
I see. One thing I'm curious about, though. While the results are impressive, did they consider the potential trade-offs of continuous profiling? The constant monitoring might introduce some overhead, right?
That's a valid point. While there's always some overhead with continuous profiling, the benefits clearly outweighed the costs in this case. The massive performance gains and cost savings far surpassed any potential overhead. It's a classic case of the cure being far better than the disease.
Got it. So, in conclusion, this case study showcases the transformative power of continuous profiling. S2's experience demonstrates how a well-chosen profiling tool can lead to significant performance improvements, cost savings, and overall system efficiency. A truly inspiring success story.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this deep dive into S2's journey as insightful as we did. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating piece from Cold Takes. Does X cause Y? An in-depth evidence review. It's a meta-analysis of meta-analyses, if you will. Intriguing, right?
Absolutely. So excited to hear about this. The title itself is a bit of a teaser, isn't it? What's the core argument?
The core argument is surprisingly simple, yet profoundly frustrating. The author explores the difficulty of establishing causality between any two variables, X and Y, from a vast range of potential pairings. Think enriched preschool and lifetime earnings, or lead exposure and violent crime. Hundreds of studies exist, but most are observational, showing correlation, not causation.
Ah, the classic correlation versus causation trap. I see. So what's the problem with these observational studies?
The big issue is confounders, lurking variables, Z, that influence both X and Y. For example, if we're looking at schooling, X, and earnings, Y, wealthier families might provide both better schooling and other advantages leading to higher earnings. It's like trying to untangle a really messy ball of yarn.
Exactly. And these studies try to control for these confounders using regression analysis, right?
Yes. But the author argues that regression analysis, while seemingly sophisticated, relies on often unstated assumptions that can easily be violated, leading to unreliable results. It's like trying to fix a leaky roof with duct tape. It might seem to work for a while, but it's not a sustainable solution.
So the author dismisses most of the observational studies. What about the better studies?
The author identifies a handful of more rigorous studies, often using natural experiments or quasi-randomized designs. These look promising at first, but even these studies have their own set of problems. Replication issues, confounding factors that weren't accounted for, and sometimes just plain unbelievable results.
So what's the conclusion then? Does X cause Y or not?
The ultimate conclusion is frustratingly ambiguous. The author ends up reverting to their initial intuition, acknowledging the inherent difficulty in definitively proving causality in many social science contexts. It highlights the limitations of current research methodologies.
Wow, that's a pretty humbling conclusion. It seems like the author emphasizes the importance of rigorous methodology, particularly randomization, to establish causality.
Precisely. The author advocates for more randomized controlled trials and extremely thorough analysis, even if it means discarding a lot of seemingly promising research. It's a call for greater skepticism and a more nuanced understanding of causality. It's a really important point.
It's a great reminder that even with mountains of data, establishing causality can be incredibly challenging. Thanks for summarizing this insightful article.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating project from MIT's Media Lab, What If If. It's all about computationally recreating the evolution of vision. Amazing, right?
Absolutely. I've been following this. So they essentially built a digital petri dish where they're evolving virtual creatures with eyes, mimicking millions of years of biological evolution, huh?
Precisely. They start with a single light-detecting cell. And these digital critters face the same survival challenges real creatures did: finding food, avoiding predators, navigating their environment. It's like a digital Cambrian explosion.
Incredible. And how do the eyes evolve? Is it just random mutations?
It's a combination of random mutations and natural selection. The creatures with more effective eyes, whether they're compound eyes for navigation or camera-like eyes for discerning food, are more likely to survive and pass on their genes. They even see the emergence of lenses, naturally, to improve focus.
So they're not just simulating the process, but also discovering the why behind certain eye structures, like the development of lenses? That's a huge leap.
Exactly. They're using this to understand the fundamental principles behind biological vision evolution. And it's not just theoretical. They've created a simulator, Artificial Cambrian Intelligence, ACI, where you can design your own creatures and evolve them.
Whoa, that's interactive. I'm definitely checking that out. But what's the ultimate goal here, beyond just recreating evolution?
That's the really exciting part. They're hoping to use these biological principles to design more intelligent artificial vision systems. Think of it as a roadmap for a Cambrian explosion of artificial vision. They're even presenting their work at the MIT Museum.
That's a bold ambition, using evolutionary principles to design AI. But, wouldn't there be limitations? I mean, evolution is a messy, unpredictable process. Can we really control that in an AI context?
That's a valid point. It's not about perfectly replicating the messiness, but about extracting the underlying principles of successful adaptation and applying those principles to guide the design process. It's a different approach to AI design, inspired by nature's proven success.
I see. So it's less about mimicking the chaos and more about leveraging the efficiency of evolutionary optimization. Fascinating.
Precisely. It's a brilliant blend of biology, computer science, and AI. This project is pushing the boundaries of what's possible in both understanding natural vision and creating artificial vision. And, it's just plain cool to see eyes evolve in a virtual world.
Definitely. Thanks for breaking this down. I'm going to dive deeper into the ACI simulator and the papers they've published. This is truly groundbreaking stuff.
You're welcome. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time with more exciting tech news. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into Find 2, a significant upgrade to their AI search engine. It's a game changer, folks. Get ready.
I've heard whispers. What exactly makes Find 2 so revolutionary? Is it just faster search results, or is there something more?
Oh, it's way more than just speed. They've completely rebuilt the engine. Think of it like this. Find 1 was a solid foundation, but Find 2 is a skyscraper built on top of it. It's a massive leap forward.
A skyscraper. I like that analogy. So what are the key architectural changes? What's the elevator pitch?
Two main things: visuals and multi-step reasoning. First, the visuals. Find 2 isn't just spitting out text anymore. You're talking images, diagrams, interactive widgets, the whole shebang. They've got complete control over how these visuals are integrated into the answer, making it far more engaging and informative.
Wow, that's a huge improvement over just plain text. Makes it much easier to digest complex information, right? But the multi-step reasoning, that's intriguing. How does that work?
Exactly. And the multi-step reasoning is where it gets really clever. If Find needs more context mid-answer, it'll automatically do more web searches. It's like it's thinking through the problem step by step, getting smarter as it goes. It can even verify calculations by running code in a Jupyter notebook. Amazing!
A Jupyter notebook integration within the search results? That's, incredibly powerful. It's like having a mini research assistant built right into the search engine. I'm curious, what kind of impact will this have on various fields? Imagine the possibilities for data scientists, researchers.
Absolutely. The implications are huge. Think about researchers needing to verify data or quickly prototype solutions. This could save them hours, maybe even days of work. It's a real game changer for anyone who needs to process and analyze information quickly and accurately. This is huge.
It sounds almost too good to be true. Is there a catch? Any limitations or potential downsides? I mean, this level of sophistication must come with some trade-offs, right?
Well, I suppose the computational resources required for this level of processing are substantial. But given their partnerships with Meta, NVIDIA, and others, it seems they've got the infrastructure to handle it. But yeah, we'll have to see how it scales with massive user adoption.
That's a valid point. Scaling is always a challenge with these kinds of advancements. But overall, this sounds like a monumental achievement. Find 2 seems poised to redefine how we interact with information online. I'm excited to try it.
Me too. And a big shout out to their partners, Meta, NVIDIA, Voltage Park, SF Compute, Vercel, and AWS, for making this possible. They're clearly pushing the boundaries of what's achievable in AI search. And remember, folks, they're hiring. If you want to be part of a team revolutionizing web search, check out their careers page. Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into Ricochet, an anonymous peer-to-peer instant messaging system. It's a fascinating project, isn't it?
Absolutely. The whole idea of metadata-free communication is incredibly appealing, especially in today's climate. But how exactly does it achieve that level of anonymity? I mean, it's not magic, right?
Right. No magic involved. It leverages the Tor network's hidden services. Your login is essentially your hidden service address. Contacts connect directly to you via Tor, bypassing any central server. This peer-to-peer architecture is key to its anonymity.
So, no central server to be compromised? That's a huge advantage. But how does it handle the challenge of connecting users without revealing their identities? It sounds like a complex routing problem.
Exactly. That's where the rendezvous system comes in. It's designed to make it incredibly difficult to trace connections back to individual users. It's a clever piece of engineering, really well thought out.
I see. Interesting. So it's essentially using Tor's anonymity features to mask the communication, but with a clever twist to prevent metadata leakage. But the GitHub page mentions it's experimental. How much should we trust it?
That's a crucial point. The developers themselves emphasize that it's experimental. Security and anonymity are incredibly complex, and no system is foolproof. They explicitly state, and I quote, "Do not rely on Ricochet for your safety unless you have more trust in my work than it deserves." It's a strong warning, and we should take it seriously.
That's a very cautious approach, and I appreciate the honesty. It's refreshing to see developers acknowledge the limitations of their work. So what about the practical side? Is it user-friendly?
Surprisingly, yes. The GitHub page highlights its cross-platform compatibility and ease of use for non-technical users. They've clearly put effort into making it accessible, which is a significant achievement given the complexity of the underlying technology. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux.
That's impressive. And what about development? Is it open source? Is the community active?
Absolutely. It's open source, licensed under a permissive license, and the GitHub repository shows a healthy level of activity. There are over 3.8K stars, 401 forks, and numerous contributors. The project seems to have a dedicated community.
That's great to hear. The active community and open source nature increase transparency and allow for independent security audits, which is vital for a project focused on anonymity. So overall, it seems like a promising project, despite its experimental nature.
Precisely. It's a bold attempt to address a significant need for secure and private communication. While it's not a silver bullet, Ricochet offers a compelling approach with a strong emphasis on user privacy. It's definitely worth keeping an eye on its development.
I agree. It's a fascinating project that pushes the boundaries of secure communication. Thanks for shedding light on Ricochet.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the incredible story of Timefold AEI, a company built to rescue a beloved open-source project. It's a roller coaster ride of perseverance, ingenuity, and a healthy dose of entrepreneurial grit. Let's get started.
I'm eager to hear this. The title alone is captivating. How did a seemingly doomed open-source project become a thriving AI company?
It all began 19 years ago, with a simple hobby project. Our protagonist, let's call him Jeff, encountered a colleague's messy, inefficient shift rostering code. This sparked an idea. A better solver, API, prioritizing ease of use. He released it open source, under the Apache license. And the rest, as they say, is history.
A hobby project that became a global success? That's amazing. What fueled its growth?
Two key factors. Meticulous documentation, a superpower for open source projects, and consistent improvement. Jeff kept adding features, examples, and thorough testing. He also actively marketed it, publishing articles and presenting at conferences. By 2012, it was a powerful library used by enterprises, even a NASA supplier.
So from hobby to enterprise-level adoption. But how did it become a company? Did Red Hat play a role?
Absolutely. Jeff's contributions landed him a job at Red Hat. They saw the potential and commercialized the project, renaming it OptiPlanner. His hobby became his work. He honed his skills, working on real-world problems, from routing technicians to scheduling airplane maintenance. User feedback was crucial. One real problem is worth 1,000 academic ideas.
I see. So a successful product within a larger company. What went wrong?
Unfortunately, IBM acquired Red Hat, and OptiPlanner's future became uncertain. Despite initial reassurances, in 2022, the project was deemed non-strategic and slated for discontinuation. Jessop's world fell apart. He was devastated.
That's heartbreaking. How did he turn things around?
That's where the real story begins. With incredible support from his wife, Joff decided to start his own company around the open source project. He realized that while a consulting model would be easy money, it wouldn't allow him to build a world-class product. He needed a product company, using an open core model. Keep the solver open source, but sell proprietary services on top. A bold move.
But starting a company requires funding and expertise, right? How did he manage that?
Exactly. He sought advice, found a co-founder, a seasoned entrepreneur, and secured pre-seed funding from a Belgian VC firm, SmartFin. This was crucial, providing the capital to build a team and develop a stronger value proposition. They forked OptiPlanner, creating Timefold Solver, and started attracting customers. It was a whirlwind.
So they built a SaaS platform. What was their key to success?
They didn't just build a platform. They built solutions for specific planning problems, like field service routing and employee scheduling, deploying them as planning AI models on their platform. This focus on solving real-world problems, rather than just selling a platform, was key to their success. They also capitalized on the AI hype, cleverly positioning their technology as planning AI. Smart marketing.
It sounds like a remarkable journey. What's next for Timefold AI?
They've secured seed funding, moved into a new office, and are continuing to expand their SaaS platform and their team. The future looks bright. They're actively building their community, improving their open source solver, and refining their go-to-market strategy. It's a testament to the power of perseverance, a strong team, and a truly valuable product. A truly inspiring story.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing this fascinating story with us. It's a great example of how passion, resilience, and smart strategy can transform a seemingly doomed project into a thriving business.
My pleasure. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Timefold AI. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into a fascinating article, Solving the ABA Problem in Rust with Tagged Pointers. It's all about concurrent programming and lock-free data structures. You know, the really cool stuff.
Right. Lock-free data structures are amazing, but the ABA problem, that's a real headache. So what's the core issue here? Quick summary, please.
The ABA problem sneaks up on you in compare and swap (CAS) operations. Imagine a thread reads a value, A, gets interrupted, and meanwhile another thread changes the value to B, then back to A. The first thread's CAS, only checking for A, thinks everything's fine, but the underlying data might be completely different. Disaster.
Got it. So a sneaky data corruption bug. This article proposes using tagged pointers with versioning, right? How does that work?
Exactly. We tag each pointer with a version number. Every update increments the version. Even if the memory address is reused, the stale version number will make the CAS fail. It's like adding a timestamp to the pointer, ensuring we're working with the most up-to-date version. Clever!
So, a simple version counter prevents a complex problem? That's elegant. But, are there any downsides to this approach?
Well, yeah, there are a few. It relies on 128-bit atomics, which isn't universally supported across all platforms. The implementation is also a bit more complex than some higher-level solutions. And, theoretically, there's a tiny chance of version counter overflow, though that's pretty unlikely in practice. A small price to pay for safety, though.
I see. Interesting. So, the article also includes tests and benchmarks, right? What did those show?
Absolutely. The tests cover single-threaded and multi-threaded scenarios, ensuring the stack behaves correctly under various conditions. The benchmarks? Well, they're impressive. Single-threaded push/pop is around 186 nanoseconds, while concurrent push/pop is a blazing fast 5 nanoseconds per iteration. That's a huge difference.
Wow, that's a significant performance boost in the concurrent case. The article mentions other solutions too, like epoch-based reclamation and hazard pointers. Are those covered in this series?
Yes, this is part 1 of a 3-part series. The next parts will delve into those alternative approaches. Each has its own strengths and weaknesses, so it's good to explore the options. Stay tuned.
Definitely. This has been a great overview. Thanks for breaking down this complex topic so clearly. It's amazing how a simple version counter can solve such a tricky problem in concurrent programming. Very insightful.
My pleasure. And remember, folks, always be mindful of the ABA problem when working with lock-free data structures. Until next time, this has been Tech Bytes and News. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating data analysis project. Do lake names actually reflect the properties of the lakes themselves? It's a surprisingly complex question, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm intrigued. The title alone suggests a fun investigation. So what's the gist of this analysis?
Well, the author starts with a personal anecdote about Lac Vert, a stunningly green lake in France, perfectly named. But then he contrasts that with Dolgoprudny, a city near Moscow, misleadingly named Long Pond, because the pond is small and outside the city limits. Classic example of a name not matching reality.
Right, so he decided to investigate further. How did he approach this?
He took a very hands-on approach. He used Overpass Turbo to collect data on the 10 most common lake names in France, Italy, Russia, and Belarus. Then, using the Mapbox API, he determined the average color of lakes with each name by analyzing satellite imagery. Quite a feat of data wrangling, wouldn't you say?
Impressive. So did the names match the colors?
Not really. It's a bit nuanced. In France, for example, lakes named Noir, black, were slightly darker than others. But the colors of blue, blanc, white, and vert, green, lakes were all pretty similar. A light blue-grayish tint. Interesting, huh?
So the color names weren't always accurate indicators of the actual lake color? That's unexpected.
Exactly. The same pattern held true for other countries. In Italy, black lakes were not consistently darker than others. In Russia and Belarus, the most common name was black, but the average lake color across all names was a consistent dark green. It seems lake naming conventions are more complex than a simple color match.
Fascinating. So what's the overall conclusion?
The author concludes that lake names are not very accurate when it comes to reflecting the actual color of the lake. He even humorously points out that his method of using a single pixel from a satellite image might not be entirely accurate either. He ends with a self-deprecating note about the whole endeavor being somewhat pointless, but I think the process itself is quite insightful.
I agree. The methodology was impressive, and the results highlight the limitations of relying solely on names for accurate geographical descriptions. It's a reminder of the complexities of data analysis and the importance of considering multiple factors. It also makes me wonder about other geographical naming conventions.
Absolutely. This study opens up a whole new avenue of research. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the surprisingly colorful world of lake names. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating case study, NVIDIA's shift from C to Spark for enhanced software security. It's a game changer, really.
Absolutely. I've been following this story. The core issue, as I understand it, is that traditional testing for security is, frankly, inadequate. You can test until the cows come home, but you can never be truly certain you've found every vulnerability.
Exactly. NVIDIA's VP of Software Security, Daniel Rohrer, put it perfectly. Testing security is pretty much impossible. They needed a more robust approach, something provable.
And that's where formal verification with SPRK comes in. It's a massive shift from relying on testing to mathematically proving code correctness, right?
Precisely. They started with a proof of concept, converting two security-sensitive applications from C to Spark in just 3 months. The results were so compelling that they expanded their use of Spark significantly.
3 months. That's impressive. And what were the key takeaways from that POC? I'm particularly interested in the performance comparison to C.
According to the case study, there was virtually no performance difference. That's a huge win, because often security measures come with a performance penalty. This wasn't the case here. They also saw a significant improvement in security robustness, and the impact on audits was transformative.
How so? How did it change their audits?
Well, instead of endless testing and bug hunting, they could demonstrate mathematically proven properties of their code. It shifted the focus of audits to other areas of security, freeing up resources and time. It's a huge efficiency boost.
That's a compelling argument for formal verification. But I imagine there was initial skepticism within NVIDIA, right? Getting developers on board with a new paradigm must have been challenging.
Oh, absolutely. The case study mentions that some initial detractors eventually became champions of Spark. That speaks volumes about the effectiveness of the technology and the results they achieved. It's a testament to the power of demonstrable results.
And what about the impact on customer relationships? How did this shift affect their interactions with customers?
It significantly improved their credibility. Being able to say, "We didn't just run some bug-checking tool, we formally verified it," carries immense weight. It builds trust and confidence with customers, showing a commitment to robust security.
It sounds like a resounding success. This case study really highlights the limitations of traditional testing in the face of increasingly sophisticated cyber threats. Formal verification seems like a necessary evolution.
Absolutely. It's a compelling example of how a proactive approach to security, even if it involves a significant paradigm shift, can yield substantial benefits in terms of efficiency, robustness, and customer trust. I highly recommend reading the full case study for a deeper dive. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We'll catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into evaluating retrieval augmented generation, RAG, for massive codebases. It's a fascinating challenge, isn't it?
Absolutely. The article from Kodo.ai highlights the complexities of evaluating RAG, especially when dealing with large, private code repositories. The core problem seems to be verifying the accuracy of the generated code, right?
Precisely. They tackled this by focusing on two key outputs, the retrieved documents and the final generated code. Focusing on these end-user-facing outputs allows for consistent quality measurement regardless of internal implementation changes. Smart, huh?
I see. So they didn't try to evaluate every single step within the RAG pipeline? That makes sense. It would be incredibly complex.
Exactly. They wisely prioritized the what, when, and how of evaluation. For what, they focused on answer correctness and retrieval accuracy. Answer correctness is a great proxy for user satisfaction. Wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And for when, they emphasized frequent, lightweight evaluations during development and before releases, mirroring the software testing pyramid. A local build evaluation is key for rapid iteration.
Exactly. The how is where it gets really interesting. Since LLMs produce free text, they couldn't use simple string comparisons. Their solution? LLM as a judge.
That's clever, using one LLM to evaluate another. But how do you handle the fact that the RAG system uses private data the judging LLM doesn't have access to?
That's the crucial point. They created a ground truth dataset using domain experts. Experts provided questions, answers, and references to the relevant code snippets. This dataset is then used to train and evaluate the LLM as a judge.
So they essentially built a benchmark. But creating that ground truth dataset sounds incredibly labor-intensive. How did they manage that?
They cleverly combined human expertise with LLM automation. They used real user questions from their production system and built an LLM pipeline to generate candidate question context answer triplets. Then, a GUI allowed experts to review and refine these candidates, making the process much more efficient.
That's a really effective approach. It leverages the strengths of both humans and LLMs. But how did they ensure the LLM as a judge was accurate itself?
They compared their LLM as a judge's scores with both RAGAS scores and human expert scores. They focused on correlation rather than absolute scores, acknowledging the subjectivity of human judgment. Their custom LLM as a judge showed better correlation, especially in higher score ranges.
So they used multiple evaluation methods for robustness. That's a best practice, for sure. And how did they integrate this whole evaluation process into their workflow?
They created a lightweight CLI tool for running evaluations locally and in CI, storing results in an experiment tracking system. They also built a regression testing system to quickly identify quality regressions after code changes. This reduced manual verification time from hours to minutes.
That's a fantastic improvement in efficiency. It sounds like a really comprehensive and well-thought-out evaluation framework. This whole process really highlights the importance of rigorous evaluation in the development of complex AI systems.
Absolutely. The Kodo team's approach provides a valuable blueprint for others working with RAG systems and large codebases. It's a testament to the power of combining human expertise with the capabilities of LLMs for efficient and reliable evaluation. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into a fascinating article detailing how Google Translate wreaks havoc on React apps, and frankly, most complex web applications. It's a real doozy.
A doozy indeed. I've heard whispers of this. So the core problem isn't just React, right? Expound. It's how Google Translate interacts with the DOM, the document object model, that underpins all web pages?
Precisely. Google Translate, while incredibly useful for bridging language barriers, aggressively manipulates the DOM. It replaces text nodes, which represent text within the HTML, with font elements. This seemingly small change has massive repercussions.
So it's not just swapping words, it's restructuring the fundamental building blocks of the web page's structure? That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. Think of it like this. You've got a beautifully crafted Lego castle, and Google Translate comes along and starts replacing individual bricks with oddly shaped, incompatible pieces. The whole thing could collapse.
Ouch! And the article mentions two main issues: translated text not updating and outright crashes. Let's tackle the first one. Why doesn't the translated text update when the underlying data changes?
Because Google Translate unmounts the original text nodes. React, with its virtual DOM, relies on updating existing nodes for efficiency. When Google Translate replaces them, React's updates are lost in translation, so to speak. The data changes, but the displayed text remains stuck in the old translation.
So a dashboard showing outdated numbers, or an e-commerce site displaying incorrect prices? That's a serious problem. And it's insidious because it doesn't even throw an error.
Exactly. It's a silent killer. The second major issue is crashes, often caused by React trying to remove or insert nodes that Google Translate has already removed. The remove child method throws a not found error because the node is no longer a child of its parent. It's a classic case of conflicting DOM manipulations.
The article suggests a few workarounds, but none are perfect. Monkey patching remove child and insert before seems like a hacky solution at best.
It is. It just masks the problem. Another workaround involves wrapping text nodes in elements. But that's a massive undertaking for a large application, requiring significant code refactoring. It's not a scalable solution.
And the article highlights that this isn't unique to Google Translate. Any browser extension that aggressively modifies the DOM can cause similar issues. Password managers, ad blockers, they're all potential culprits.
You're right. It's a broader problem of extension interference with modern, dynamic web apps. The article even mentions a collectible card game extension that injects images, potentially causing similar conflicts.
So what's the takeaway? Is there a silver bullet?
Unfortunately, no silver bullet. The most reliable, albeit regrettable, solution is to block Google Translate entirely. It's a trade-off between accessibility and app stability. Alternatively, building your own internationalization system is an option, but it's a huge undertaking.
A huge undertaking indeed. So it seems the ball is in Google's court, or perhaps the browser extension developers' court, to find a more harmonious way for extensions to coexist with complex web apps. This is a critical issue for web developers to be aware of.
Absolutely. The article ends with a plea to upvote the bug report on the Chromium project. Raising awareness is key to pushing for a solution. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope this deep dive into the world of Google Translate and React was insightful and, dare I say, slightly terrifying. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into MapTHA, an open-source CapTHA that's revolutionizing OpenStreetMap. It's incredibly exciting.
Absolutely, I've been following this project. The idea of using CapTHAs to improve map data is brilliant, isn't it? It's a win-win, right?
Exactly. The traditional CapTHA model is often clunky and relies on third-party services, potentially compromising user data. MapTHA cleverly sidesteps this. It uses AI to identify potential map features, like building outlines, from aerial imagery. But the AI isn't perfect, right?
Right, that's where the human element comes in. The clever part is how it presents a mix of images, some where the AI is correct, some where it's wrong, and some that are uncertain. Users essentially validate the AI's work by identifying correctly interpreted objects.
Precisely. They're presented with a mix of known positives, AI and OSM agree, known negatives, neither agree, and unknowns. By aggregating user responses, they build confidence in the accuracy of the AI's predictions for those unknowns. It's a beautiful example of human-in-the-loop machine learning.
And the best part? When there's high confidence in an unknown object, it suggests the location for OSM mapping. This directly contributes to improving OpenStreetMap's accuracy and completeness. It's a fantastic application of crowdsourcing.
I see. Interesting. It's not just about verifying existing data, it's actively creating new, accurate data. It's a game changer for OpenStreetMap. The fact that they're using FAIR, an open-source AI-assisted mapping system from HOT, makes it even better. It's all open and transparent.
I do have a slight concern, though. The accuracy of the AI model is crucial, right? If the AI is consistently wrong, the whole system could be skewed. How do they address that?
That's a valid point. They mentioned plans to refine the AI models, which is essential. They also plan to expand to more objects and imagery types, which will require further model training and refinement. It's an ongoing process, but the open-source nature allows for community contributions to improve the AI's accuracy over time.
That's reassuring. The future plans are ambitious. Integrating MapQA into login systems, enhancing the UI. It has the potential to become a ubiquitous solution for CAP-TCHAs, while simultaneously improving global mapping efforts. It's a really elegant solution to a complex problem.
Absolutely. And the presentation at FOSDEM sounds fascinating. They'll be discussing the challenges of working with AI-derived data, which is a crucial aspect often overlooked. It's not just about the technology. It's about the practical implications and the challenges of integrating it into existing workflows.
Definitely something to keep an eye on. This could be a significant advancement in both CAP-TCHA technology and geographic information systems. Thanks for highlighting this. It's truly inspiring.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating art project, Lost in Love, a generative art maze created by Bert Kessels. It's really quite unique.
I'm intrigued. Generative art always sounds so cool. So what exactly is Lost in Love?
It's a web app that generates a unique maze based on two names you input. Think of it as a personalized, digital artwork for you and your loved one. The maze itself is the art, and the process of its creation is animated, which is a neat touch.
That's a clever idea. So how does the name input translate into a maze? Is it some kind of complex algorithm?
Exactly. The names are used as a seed for a random number generator. This seed ensures that the maze is unique to those two names. The algorithm itself is a common recursive backtracking algorithm. But the visual style is what Kessels really focused on, inspired by Ricky Byrne's screen prints.
Ah, I see. So it's not just about the math, it's about the aesthetic outcome. And the animation of the maze generation process, that's a smart way to engage the user, right? It's like watching the art being born.
Precisely. It's a slow process, but it adds to the experience. It's a deliberate choice by the artist to showcase the generative process itself as part of the artwork. It's not just about the final product, but the journey to get there.
That's a really interesting approach. It makes the whole thing feel more personal and less like a simple algorithm churning out a result. What about customization options? Can you tweak the maze's complexity or style?
Nope. The only customization is the names themselves. The algorithm is fixed, which is intentional. The artwork is solely determined by the two names provided. But, and this is cool, the code is open source on GitHub. So technically, you could modify the code to add more customization if you're so inclined.
Oh wow, open source, that's fantastic. It really encourages community involvement and further development. It's a great way to make the project even more accessible and collaborative. What tools did Kessels use to create this?
Initially, he used Nanu in Rust. Then, for the web app, he ported the code to TypeScript using p5.js and Vite for the build process. It's a pretty impressive technical feat, moving from a desktop application to a web-based one.
It really is. And the fact that sharing the maze is only enabled after generation, that's a nice touch too. It ensures the user sees the whole process. Though I imagine there might be some browser compatibility issues, given the nature of the project.
You're right. The description mentions that sharing might not work perfectly on all browsers, and some browser plugins could interfere. Chrome on Android seems to be the most reliable platform. But hey, that's a minor detail compared to the overall ingenuity of the project.
Absolutely. It's a really creative and well-executed project. The combination of generative art, a personal touch through names, and the open source aspect makes it stand out. It's a great example of how technology can be used to create unique and meaningful art.
I completely agree. It's a beautiful blend of art, technology, and a touch of romance. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Lost in Love. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating post about reviving the defunct Juki audio player. It's not just a hardware fix, it's a journey into firmware hacking, uncovering hidden exploits, and ultimately, reclaiming control of a forgotten device. Exciting, right?
Absolutely. I'm hooked already. So, this Juki, it was a popular screen-free audio player for kids, but the company went belly up, leaving many devices unusable. This blog post details how to bring them back to life, essentially.
Precisely. The author meticulously details the Juki's internal workings. We're talking about reverse engineering the firmware, finding a backdoor, and even achieving code execution. It's a goldmine of technical details.
So what's the hardware like? I'm curious about the components.
The Juki uses an ESP32 microcontroller, an 8GB SD card with multiple partitions, a speaker, and a battery. The SD card's file system is a fascinating mix of X4 and FAT partitions, each serving a specific purpose. There's a factory partition, a content partition for audio files, and a config partition for settings. It's all very cleverly organized.
And the software, how does the update mechanism work?
It uses Mender, an open-source OTA updater. This is a really smart approach, using a dual partition system for atomic updates and rollbacks. If an update fails, it automatically reverts to the previous version, preventing bricked devices. The configuration is stored in a minder.conference file, and the server used was minder2.muselabs.com. Unfortunately, that server seems to be down now.
So if you could control that server, you could potentially update all Juki devices? That's a powerful position to be in.
Exactly. A huge security implication. But the author also found some more immediate vulnerabilities. There's an HTTP server with several interesting endpoints. 1/LL acts as a root backdoor, allowing arbitrary command execution. Another, /flags, lets you set various flags that control different aspects of the device's functionality. It's a bit like a hidden control panel.
Whoa! So essentially, you could remotely control these devices through these vulnerabilities?
Yes, but there's more. The heartbeat script, which checks in with my.juki.rocks, has a critical flaw. It executes any additional code returned by the server, prefixed with #ml_OTA, without any validation. And, even worse, it ignores SSL certificate verification. This is a major security hole.
I see. So an attacker could potentially hijack the DNS and inject malicious code into the devices? That's terrifyingly efficient.
Exactly. The author also mentions other interesting points, like the hard-coded root password in the shadow file and the possibility of modifying the Juki.conference file through the web interface to add your SSH public key. There's even a way to reprogram the ESP32 to reset the device. It's a complete technical deep dive.
This is incredible. It's a testament to both the ingenuity of the original Juki design and the resourcefulness of the author in finding these vulnerabilities. But it also highlights the importance of secure coding practices, especially in IoT devices.
Absolutely. This blog post is a valuable lesson in both reverse engineering and security. It shows how seemingly small oversights can lead to significant vulnerabilities. And, it's also a great example of how a community can breathe new life into abandoned technology. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Juki hacking. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a truly remarkable project, the creation of a miniature book using AI, a pen plotter, and a whole lot of ingenuity. It's a story of perseverance, unexpected challenges, and ultimately, a heartwarming gift. Isn't that exciting?
Absolutely. This sounds amazing. I'm particularly intrigued by the use of AI in the illustration process. How did that work exactly?
Well, the author initially planned to have his illustrations hand-drawn by a friend, But to avoid adding extra work, he decided to take on the challenge himself. He used Midjourney, an AI image generator, to create the illustrations. But it wasn't a simple process.
Oh, I see. So what were some of the hurdles he encountered using Midjourney?
He found that getting the desired style, simple, hand-drawn illustrations, took many attempts. He had to experiment extensively with prompts, using keywords like black and white, vector line art, and children's coloring book to guide the AI. He even used a style reference code to influence the output. It was a real learning curve.
Wow, that's dedication. And what about turning those AI-generated images into something the pen plotter could use?
That's where things got even more interesting. He initially tried a halftone technique, but that lost the hand-drawn feel. Instead, he used a technique called centerline tracing, which, get this, follows the middle path of shapes to create a single line. This preserved the hand-drawn aesthetic much better. Clever, right?
Incredibly clever. But even with centerline tracing, it wasn't perfect, was it?
No, he still had to do a lot of manual cleanup in GIMP, separating lines and redrawing parts to achieve the desired crispness. He even redrew his dog to look exactly like their pet. It was a labor of love.
So after generating the illustrations, what was the next step in this multifaceted project?
Next came the text. He initially considered handwriting it, but opted for Hershey text, a font ideal for pen plotting, which gave it a playful, hand-drawn look. Then came the plotting itself, which involved carefully designing the layout in Figma to ensure the correct page order after double-sided printing. Talk about meticulous planning.
And I bet the actual plotting wasn't without its challenges either, right?
You're right. He initially used Pigma micron markers, but they were too thick. He eventually switched to a Rotring Isograph 0.2 mm technical pen, which produced the superfine lines he needed. He also had to experiment with different paperweights to prevent smudging. It was a real trial and error process.
It sounds like it. And then, the final hurdle, bookbinding. Did he have any prior experience with that?
None whatsoever. He learned through online resources, even 3D printing parts of the binding. He initially used superglue, which was a mistake, but he learned from it and switched to proper bookbinding glue. He even designed and 3D printed a tool to help him sew the pages evenly. Amazing!
That's incredible resourcefulness. So what was the final result?
A beautiful, tiny book filled with personal illustrations and memories. A truly unique and heartfelt gift. His wife was overjoyed, and that's what truly matters. The whole project is a testament to the power of combining technology and personal touch. Even though there were imperfections, the handmade quality adds to its charm.
Absolutely. It's a fantastic story, and a great example of how technology can be used to create something truly special and meaningful. A truly inspiring project.
It certainly is. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you were inspired to try your own creative project. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating paper on large memory models, or LM2, as the authors call it. It's a game changer, folks.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this. From what I understand, it's all about boosting the capabilities of standard transformer architectures, right? Specifically, tackling their limitations in complex reasoning tasks.
Exactly. The core idea is to augment the transformer with an auxiliary memory module. Think of it as giving the model a powerful scratch pad to work with. This allows it to handle multi-step reasoning, relational arguments, and synthesize information across much longer contexts than traditional models can manage. It's a clever approach.
So how does this memory module actually work? Is it just a simple storage unit, or is there more to it?
Oh, it's far from simple. It acts as a contextual representation repository. It interacts with the input tokens through cross-attention mechanisms, and it updates its contents using gating mechanisms. It's a dynamic, interactive process, not just passive storage.
Interesting. So it's not replacing the original transformer architecture, but rather working alongside it?
Precisely. That's a key design choice. They wanted to preserve the general-purpose nature of the transformer while adding this powerful memory enhancement features. It's a complementary pathway, not a replacement.
And the results? Did this approach actually yield significant improvements?
Oh, absolutely. They tested LM2 on the Babylon benchmark, and the results are stunning. It outperformed the memory-augmented RMT model by a whopping 37.1%, and the baseline Llama 3.2 model by a mind-boggling 86.3% on average across tasks. That's a huge leap forward.
Wow, that's impressive. What kind of tasks did it excel at specifically?
Multi-hop inference, numerical reasoning, and large context question answering were all areas where LM2 really shone. It's not just about memorization. It's about using the memory effectively to reason and solve problems.
But did this memory enhancement come at a cost? Did it impact performance on more general tasks?
That's a great question, and the authors address that. They tested LM2 on the MMLU dataset, and it actually achieved a 5% improvement over a pre-trained vanilla model. So not only did it excel at complex reasoning, but it didn't sacrifice performance on general tasks. That's a significant finding.
So it's a win-win situation. This is truly groundbreaking work. What about the interpretability of the memory? Can we understand what's going on inside that memory module?
That's an area they explored as well. They delved into the memory interpretability, the effectiveness of the memory modules, and the test time behavior. While the full details are in the paper, their findings strongly support the idea that explicit memory is crucial for enhancing transformer architectures. It's not just a nice-to-have. It's a necessity for pushing the boundaries of AI.
This is incredibly exciting. It seems like LM2 opens up a whole new avenue for research in large language models. It's a significant contribution to the field.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the power of innovative architectural designs. The paper is a must-read for anyone working in this space. And that's all the time we have for today's episode. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of large memory models. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating development. Apple's App Tracking Transparency Framework, ATTF, is under scrutiny. Specifically, a German watchdog is questioning Apple's apparent exemption from its own strict rules. Intriguing, right?
Absolutely. So Apple boasts about its commitment to user privacy with ATTF, forcing other apps to get explicit consent before tracking user activity across apps. But the German Federal Cartel Office alleges Apple isn't playing by its own rules. Is that correct?
Precisely. The watchdog's preliminary findings suggest Apple's definition of tracking conveniently excludes its own practices. They claim Apple combines user data from the App Store, Apple ID, and connected devices for advertising purposes, without the same level of transparent consent required of third-party apps. It's a bit of a double standard, isn't it?
Yeah, a huge one. It seems like Apple is benefiting from the very data collection it restricts for others. This reminds me of the Meta situation. Remember how Meta lost billions because of ATTF? This is a potential antitrust issue, right?
Exactly. Meta's struggles highlight the impact of ATTF on companies heavily reliant on cross-app tracking. The German Cartel Office points out that Apple's vast ecosystem allows it to circumvent these restrictions, while smaller app developers lack the same data resources. It's a clear case of self-preferencing, potentially violating competition law.
I see. And it's not just the data collection. The consent process itself is apparently different. Apple's apps seem to have a much smoother, less intrusive consent process compared to third-party apps. This is a subtle but significant difference, isn't it?
Absolutely. The report suggests Apple's consent dialogues are designed to increase the likelihood of user consent compared to the ATTF dialogues for third-party apps. They even mention a difference in the number of prompts, up to 4 for third-party apps versus a maximum of 2 for Apple's own apps. This is a very clever, yet potentially problematic, strategy.
It's a bit sneaky, isn't it? It's like Apple is saying, we're all about privacy, but not for us. This whole situation raises serious questions about the fairness and transparency of Apple's practices. What's Apple's response to all this?
At the time of publication, Apple hadn't responded to requests for comment. But this silence speaks volumes, doesn't it? The German Cartel Office's investigation is ongoing, and the outcome could have significant implications for Apple's business model and its reputation. This is a major story to follow.
Indeed. This could set a precedent for how tech giants are held accountable for their data practices. It's a fascinating clash between a company's desire to protect its market position and the need for fair competition and user privacy. A very interesting development.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that even companies championing user privacy can face scrutiny when their actions don't align with their public image. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We'll keep you updated on this developing story. Goodbye for now.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of secure communication, specifically the alt.anonymous.messages newsgroup. It's a throwback to the early days of the internet, a relic from the cypherpunk era, but still surprisingly relevant today.
Right. I've always been intrigued by anonymous communication methods. So, this alt.anonymous.messages newsgroup, how does it actually work?
Essentially, it's a PGP encrypted messaging system disguised as a Usenet newsgroup. Think of it as a digital post office box. But instead of letters, you have encrypted messages. You use software like AAM Direct to encrypt your message with the recipient's public key, then anonymously post it to the newsgroup.
So, no direct connection between sender and receiver? That's pretty clever. But how does the recipient get their messages?
Exactly. No direct link. The recipient uses AAM Direct to download all the encrypted posts from the newsgroup. Only messages encrypted with their public key can be decrypted by them. It's like having a private, anonymous email system without actually using email.
Interesting. So AAM Direct is the key here. It handles encryption, posting, and downloading all in one package? Is it complicated to use?
It's freeware, readily available online. The interface might seem a bit dated, but the core functionality is straightforward. It uses PGP, Mixmaster, or even TLS/Tunnel for encryption, depending on your setup. It's not exactly user-friendly for the average person, but for those who need strong anonymity, it's a powerful tool.
You mentioned Mixmaster. Isn't that an old remailer system? Isn't it vulnerable?
You're right. Mixmaster is older technology. And yes, there have been discussions about its vulnerabilities, including a notable presentation by Tom Ritter at DEFCON in 2013. He explored ways to de-anonymize users of alt.anonymous.messages. So it's crucial to understand its limitations. It's not foolproof, but it still offers a decent level of anonymity for many users.
I see. So it's a trade-off between ease of use and security. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a viable option for certain situations. What kind of situations would someone use this for?
Exactly. The article mentions survival planning, not just in the sense of being lost in the wilderness, but also situations where you need to communicate securely while remaining undetected. Think whistleblowers, journalists in oppressive regimes, or anyone needing truly private communication. It's a niche tool, but a powerful one for those who need it.
That makes sense. It's a fascinating glimpse into the history of secure communication and the ongoing cat-and-mouse game between those seeking anonymity and those trying to break it. Thanks for explaining this.
My pleasure. And remember, folks, while alt.anonymous.messages offers a degree of anonymity, it's not impenetrable. Always be aware of the potential risks involved in using any anonymous communication system. Thanks for tuning in to Tech Bytes and News. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving into a fascinating piece from Nature. Are PhDs losing their luster? Why fewer students are enrolling in doctoral degrees? It's a really concerning trend, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a worrying development. What are the main reasons cited in the article for this decline?
Well, the article points to a few key factors. One major issue is the disparity between the cost of living and PhD stipends. In Australia, for example, the average stipend is significantly below the minimum wage, making it incredibly difficult, especially for older students with families.
Wow, that's a stark reality. So it's not just about the prestige anymore, it's about basic financial survival?
Exactly. The article highlights similar situations in Japan and Brazil. In Japan, PhD enrollments have been dropping since the early 2000s, and in Brazil, they hit a near-decade low in 2022, partly due to the pandemic and economic crisis. It's a global problem.
I see. And what about job prospects after graduation? Does the article mention that as a factor?
Yes, absolutely. Limited academic jobs are a huge deterrent. The uncertainty of finding a position after years of dedicated study is a major concern for potential PhD candidates. It's a significant risk. You know?
Right. It's a huge investment of time and effort, and the payoff isn't guaranteed. So what are some of the proposed solutions mentioned in the article?
The article suggests several solutions. Increased funding for stipends is a major one, bringing them closer to a living wage. We've seen some positive movement in this area, with Canada recently increasing graduate scholarships and Brazil boosting grants for master's and doctoral students. But more needs to be done.
Definitely. And what about diversifying career options beyond academia? Is that something the article addresses?
Yes, the OECD emphasizes the need to diversify career paths for PhD graduates. Many skills gained during doctoral studies are transferable to other sectors, but there needs to be more support and awareness to facilitate these transitions. It's not just about academia anymore.
That's a crucial point. It's about making PhDs a more viable and attractive option for a wider range of career aspirations. Otherwise, we risk losing a lot of talented individuals to other fields.
Precisely. And the article also touches upon the financial strain on universities themselves, particularly in countries that have capped international student numbers. This creates a vicious cycle, impacting their ability to support early career researchers. It's a complex issue with multiple interconnected factors.
It certainly is. So, in conclusion, the decline in PhD enrollments is a multifaceted problem requiring a multifaceted solution. It's not just about money. It's about career security and the overall value proposition of pursuing a doctoral degree.
Exactly. It's a wake-up call for policymakers and institutions to address these issues proactively. Otherwise, we risk hindering scientific progress and losing valuable talent. Thanks for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you found this discussion insightful. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving into a fascinating paper, Understanding the Basis of the Kalman Filter via a Simple and Intuitive Derivation. It's a classic piece, really helps demystify this powerful algorithm.
Right. I've always found Kalman filters a bit intimidating, all those matrices and equations. But a simple and intuitive derivation? That sounds promising. What's the core idea?
Exactly. The paper focuses on making the Kalman filter accessible. It cleverly breaks down the core concepts step by step, avoiding overwhelming the reader with complex math up front. It starts with the fundamental problem, estimating an unknown state based on noisy measurements, right?
Yes, that's the essence of it. So how does this derivation approach the problem differently? Does it use a specific technique?
It uses a really clever approach. Instead of jumping straight into the full Kalman filter equations, it builds up the solution incrementally. It starts with a simple case, then gradually adds complexity, showing how each component contributes to the overall solution. It's like building with Legos. You start with a simple structure and add pieces one by one.
I see. So it's a pedagogical approach, prioritizing understanding over immediate mathematical rigor? That's a great way to tackle a complex topic. Does it use any specific examples or analogies to illustrate the concepts?
Absolutely. It uses several analogies to make the concepts more intuitive. I think one of the most effective is the comparison to a simple averaging process. It shows how the Kalman filter is essentially a sophisticated weighted average, where the weights are determined by the uncertainty in the measurements and the model.
Interesting. So it's not just about the math, but also about the intuition behind the weighting scheme. That's crucial for understanding how the filter works. Does the paper delve into the practical applications of the Kalman filter? I mean, beyond the theoretical explanation?
Yes, it does touch upon applications, but mostly focuses on the core concepts. It hints at its use in various fields like navigation, tracking, and signal processing, but doesn't go into specific examples in detail. It's more of a foundational paper, setting the stage for deeper exploration.
That makes sense. A strong foundation is essential before diving into the specifics of applications. So overall, would you recommend this paper to someone looking to understand the Kalman filter?
Absolutely. It's a fantastic resource for anyone who wants to grasp the underlying principles without getting bogged down in the mathematical intricacies. The intuitive approach and clear explanations make it a truly valuable contribution to the literature. It's a great starting point, you know?
I agree. It sounds like a perfect blend of rigor and accessibility. Thanks for highlighting this paper. It's definitely going on my reading list.
My pleasure. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bites and News. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bites and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today, we're diving deep into the vibrant world of Wari textiles, a fascinating glimpse into pre-Columbian Arendian artistry. The intricate tie-dye techniques, the sheer scale of production, it's breathtaking. Let's get started.
I'm eager to hear this. The article mentions the Inca paying tribute with cochineal, a vibrant red dye fork. Was this a common practice before the Spanish arrived, or was it a new development?
That's a great question. While the cochineal dye was certainly prized by the Inca, and its intensity was a revelation to the Europeans, the Andeans had a sophisticated textile tradition long before the Spanish conquest. They had mastered various dyeing techniques, and the article highlights the meticulous processes involved, from harvesting the dye to breeding alpacas for finer wool. It was a highly organized and ritualized system. Amazing, right?
Absolutely. The scale of production is astounding. The article mentions government-sponsored workshops producing tunics requiring miles of wool. That implies a level of societal organization and resource management far beyond what many might imagine for that era.
Precisely. The uniformity in design and dimensions of the Wari Unku tunics strongly suggests large-scale, centralized production. These weren't just everyday garments. They were likely used for diplomatic gifts or worn by high-ranking officials. Think of the power and prestige conveyed by such a garment.
The tie-dye technique itself is fascinating. The article explains how they used resist dyeing to create intricate patterns, sometimes combining multiple colors. It sounds incredibly complex.
It is. The Wari weren't just using simple tie-dye. They were creating complex patterns, sometimes combining different shapes and colors in unexpected ways. The article compares the finished pieces to the skins of forest snakes or jaguars, highlighting the symbolic significance of these patterns within their culture. It's like a visual language.
And the construction. The tunics weren't simply cut and sewn. The patches were woven into their irregular shapes from the start. The article calls this technical over-elaboration, a deliberate choice of the most difficult method. Why would they do that?
That's a point of ongoing scholarly debate. It speaks to a level of technical mastery and a cultural value placed on craftsmanship that goes beyond mere functionality. Perhaps it was about demonstrating skill or imbuing the garments with deeper symbolic meaning through the process itself. It's a mystery that adds to their allure, isn't it?
Absolutely. The article also touches upon the challenges of studying these textiles, mentioning issues with provenance and even recent alterations. It's a reminder that the history of these objects is as complex as their creation.
You're right. Many of these textiles ended up in collections through questionable means, making it difficult to trace their origins. And the alterations, documented by experts like Anne Rowe, highlight how these objects have been recontextualized, sometimes losing their original meaning in the process. It's a sobering reminder of the impact of colonialism and the challenges of preserving cultural heritage. A truly fascinating and complex story.
It certainly is. The combination of artistic skill, technical mastery, and the historical context makes these Wadari textiles truly remarkable. It's a testament to the ingenuity and cultural richness of the Athendian civilizations.
Exactly. From the intricate tie-dye techniques to the large-scale production and the symbolic significance of the designs, the Wari textiles offer a captivating window into a sophisticated and vibrant past. Thank you for joining us on Tech Bytes and News. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Wari textiles. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to Tech Bytes and News, your daily roundup of articles featured in Hacker News. Today we're diving deep into Aider, an AI pair programming tool that's making waves in the developer community. It's incredibly exciting.
I've heard whispers, but what exactly does it do? Is it just another code completion tool?
Oh, it's so much more than that. Aider lets you pair program with LLMs directly in your terminal, working within your local Git repository. Think of it as having a super-powered coding buddy right there with you.
So it's not just suggesting code, it's actively participating in the development process?
Exactly. You can ask it to add features, write test cases, debug, refactor code, even update documentation. It's amazing. It even automatically commits changes with sensible commit messages.
That's brilliant. What LLMs does it support? I'm assuming it's not limited to just one.
You're right, it's incredibly versatile. It works best with Claude 3.5 Sonnet, DeepSeek R1 and Chat v3, OpenAI's O1, O3 Mini, and GPT-4o, but it can connect to almost any LLM, including local models. The flexibility is a huge plus.
That's a lot of options. How easy is it to get started? I'm a bit of a newbie when it comes to setting up these kinds of tools.
Surprisingly easy. If you have Python 3.8 to 3.13, you can install it with a simple pip command. Then, it's just a matter of specifying the LLM and API key you want to use. Their documentation is quite thorough, with tutorials and even video guides.
I see. And it handles multiple files? That's crucial for larger projects.
Absolutely. It can edit multiple files simultaneously for complex requests. It even uses a map of your entire Git repo to understand the context better, which is a huge advantage when working on larger codebases.
That's impressive. Does it support all the major programming languages?
It supports Python, JavaScript, TypeScript, PHP, HTML, CSS, and many more. The list is constantly growing. It's really quite comprehensive.
Incredible. But I'm curious, what about its performance? How does it stack up against other similar tools?
Aider has one of the top scores on SWE Bench, a rigorous software engineering benchmark. It solved real GitHub issues from popular open source projects like Django, scikit-learn, and Matplotlib. It's not just hype, it's proven to be highly effective.
That's reassuring. And the user feedback seems overwhelmingly positive. I'm seeing comments about increased productivity and even life-changing experiences.
Yes, many users report significant improvements in productivity. Some even say it's like having a senior developer right in their Git repo. It's truly transformative for many developers.
This sounds almost too good to be true. Are there any limitations or drawbacks?
Well, the performance is heavily reliant on the chosen LLM and its API. Some LLMs might be more expensive than others. Also, while it's incredibly powerful, it's still an AI. You need to review and test its suggestions. It's a collaborative tool, not a replacement for human developers.
That's a fair point. It's a tool to augment, not replace, human skills. So overall, it seems like a game changer for developers.
Absolutely. Aider is a powerful and versatile tool that's already making a significant impact on the developer community. It's definitely worth checking out. And that's all the time we have for today's Tech Bytes and News. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the daily roundup of Tech Bytes and News. See you again tomorrow. Goodbye.